The city's streets glistened under a layer of fresh snow, every light reflecting off the frozen pavement like tiny stars. The wind cut through coats and scarves alike, and the air smelled of smoke, wet asphalt, and something sharper, loneliness. Most people hurried past, their eyes glued to their phones, cars, or the warmth waiting at home. But not everyone could ignore the little figures huddled near the curb. A small boy, no older than 5, clutched a baby in his arms. The baby, wrapped in a torn, thin blanket, was shaking violently. Tiny lips blew from the cold. Snowflakes stuck to their hair and eyelashes. The boy's hands were raw, fingers numb from holding her close, desperate to protect her. His little shoes had long been soaked through, and his coat was threadbare, leaving him shivering. He looked around, searching desperately for anyone willing to stop and help. "Sir! Please! My baby sister's freezing," he said softly, voice cracking, eyes wide and pleading. "Please, she's so cold." For a moment, the world didn't move. Cars honked impatiently. People passed without a glance. It was as though the snow had swallowed their cries. The baby whimpered, curling closer to her brother. Her tiny body was fragile, her breaths coming fast and shallow. Then, through the blur of rushing pedestrians, a figure appeared. He was tall, impeccably dressed, moving with a purpose that seemed to demand attention. Ethan Blackwood, a billionaire known for his icy demeanor, stepped out from the shadows of a luxury car. The snow crunched beneath his polished shoes. He was on his way to a gala, the last thing on his mind a pair of shivering children on the street. But something made him stop. At first, it was curiosity, a flicker of annoyance that someone dared delay his evening. But then he saw the little boy's eyes, red from cold and fear, pleading with him, and the baby's tiny fingers clutching for warmth. Ethan frowned. He had spent decades learning to ignore emotional distractions, to run his empire without sentiment, to build walls around himself that no one could breach. And yet, here he was, rooted to the spot, unable to turn away. "Sir, my sister." "Please, she's freezing," the boy repeated, voice shaking, tears streaking the grime on his cheeks. Ethan's hand instinctively went to his coat. Without thinking, he slipped it off and crouched down. The boy's eyes widened. "You'll help us?" Ethan simply nodded, pulling the trembling children close. The warmth of his coat enveloped him like a soft fortress against the biting cold. The baby stopped crying instantly, buried her face in the folds of his coat. The boy pressed his cheek against Ethan's arm, drawing comfort from the unexpected safety. For the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan felt a flicker of something he thought he had lost long ago. Responsibility without obligation, care without calculation. "Get in the car," he said softly, voice almost unfamiliar to him. His tone left no room for argument, but it carried no harshness either. The boy nodded eagerly and climbed in, balancing the baby in his arms. Ethan followed, closing the door behind them, shutting out the world of indifferent pedestrians and biting wind. Inside the car, the warmth was immediate, but Ethan noticed how fragile they were, their small bodies trembling despite his coat. The baby's little hands kept reaching for his chest, seeking reassurance. He studied her face, pale, round cheeks, wisps of hair sticking to damp skin, tiny lips still quivering. And the boy's eyes were wide and haunted, full of maturity that no child his age should bear. Where's your parents?" Ethan asked cautiously, trying to sound less intimidating. The boy hesitated. His small fingers clenched the baby tighter. "Our mom, she's gone," he whispered. "Dad, he's not coming. We don't have anywhere to go." Ethan's chest tightened. He had always been good at keeping emotions at bay, but the stark reality of their situation cut through his carefully constructed barriers. He glanced at the snow-covered streets outside, at the indifferent passers-by, and realized at this moment, this choice was his to make. Without another word, he started the car. The engine hummed, warm air flowing over the children. But the emotional warmth was something entirely different. It radiated from him silently, a promise of protection that he had never imagined he would make. The boy, sensing the shift, dared to look up. "Sir, are we safe now?" he asked, voice barely audible. Ethan didn't answer with words. He only glanced in the rear-view mirror at the two fragile lives in his care. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, a decision crystallizing in his mind. For the first time in decades, he would do something not for profit, not for power, but for love. The streets blurred past. Neon signs flickered. Snow swirled in the headlights, and Ethan's mind raced. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a saint. He was a man who had lost everything that mattered. And yet, in these two small faces, he saw a chance to be someone different. Someone more than a lonely billionaire who owned buildings and yachts, but nothing truly alive. The boy broke the silence. "Sir, will you let us stay with you?" Ethan's jaw tightened. His instinct screamed to say no. Rules, logic, reputation, all demanded he turn them over to social services. Let the system take its course. But the boy's eyes and the tiny hand of the baby reaching for him made the decision for him. "Yes, you'll stay." His voice was firm, and yet there was a softness beneath it that even he hadn't expected. The car drove through the falling snow, carrying 3 lives into a world of warmth, safety, and the unknown. Outside, the city continued, unaware of the small miracle unfolding in the back seat of a billionaire's car, a boy and his baby sister, finally being seen, finally being saved. For Ethan, it was a moment that would change everything. The night was cold, the wind harsh, but inside the car, there was a warmth that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with heart. And as the mansion lights appeared on the horizon, reflecting off the snowy streets like a beacon, Ethan knew, without doubt, that their lives and his own would never be the same. The car hummed softly as it cut through the snowy streets, leaving behind the indifferent city and carrying 3 fragile lives towards something unfamiliar, something that looked like luxury, but smelled like cold marble and loneliness. Ethan's hands gripped the steering wheel, eyes focused on the road, but his mind was elsewhere. He had made a decision, an impulsive, reckless decision. But for the first time in decades, his heart had overruled logic. The boy, still clutching his baby sister, leaned back against the car seat, his little body finally starting to warm beneath Ethan's coat. The baby's tiny breaths were slower now, comforted by the heat and the soft rhythm of the car. Ethan stole a glance at them in the rear-view mirror. The boy's eyes, wide and curious, studied him as if trying to measure whether this man, this stranger who suddenly became their savior, was someone they could trust. "You have a home?" Ethan asked, his voice cautious but gentle. The boy shook his head. We don't have anyone. Mom, she's gone. Dad, he's not coming. We have nowhere to go." His voice broke at the last word, a sob threatening to escape. Ethan's chest tightened. He had lived decades in a world of numbers, deals, and calculated risks, but he had never been faced with something this raw, this human. And yet, the warmth spreading through the car, the small lives pressed against him, stirred something he thought had died long ago. The mansion appeared ahead, its silhouette illuminated against the dark sky, vast and imposing. Marble steps glistened with snow, and warm golden light poured from tall windows, reflecting off the freshly fallen snow. Ethan pulled the car up to the valet, ignoring the uniformed attendants who raised eyebrows at his impromptu passengers. He opened the back door, lifting the baby in one arm while guiding the boy with the other. "Welcome home," he said, almost awkwardly, his voice unfamiliar to himself. The boy blinked at the opulent surroundings, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. The baby, still bundled in the coat, stared at the grand chandelier with her tiny fists curling into the soft folds of fabric. Inside, the mansion was silent, too quiet. It smelled of polished wood, leather, and a faint hint of flowers, but there was no laughter, no warmth of family. Ethan led them to a sitting room with a roaring fireplace, the flames casting soft, golden shadows. He set the baby gently on a plush sofa, wrapping her in a thick blanket, while the boy sat next to her, brushing wisps of hair from her face. "You'll be safe here," Ethan said, trying to sound reassuring, though his tone lacked the natural warmth he wanted it to have. The boy nodded hesitantly, hugging his sister close. For a long moment, the 3 of them sat in silence, listening to the crackle of the fire. Ethan studied the children. The boy's clothes were soaked, tattered, but his posture, protective, watchful, belied a maturity far beyond his years. The baby's small hands twitched as she slept, reaching for the warmth surrounding her. They were fragile, and yet somehow resilient. Ethan cleared his throat. I need to get you something warm to eat. He left them briefly, returning with bowls of hot chocolate and simple pastries. The boy's eyes lit up at the sight, and he cautiously handed the baby her own cup. She took tiny sips, her lips puckering, then smiled, a small, hesitant smile that lit up the room. Watching her, Ethan felt a pang in his chest. He hadn't smiled in years, not really. His life had been a series of transactions and meetings, profits and losses. But here was something real, something that mattered. As they ate, the boy finally spoke. "Sir, what's your name?" "Ethan," he replied simply. The boy's eyes studied him, as if weighing the truth of that single word. "I'm Liam, and this is my sister Emma," the boy said. Are we going to stay here?" Ethan hesitated. Part of him wanted to say no. The rules, the logic, the practical world all screamed that he had no place for two children in his life. But the warmth in his chest, the way Emma had clung to him, the look in Liam's eyes, it was impossible to deny. "Yes," he finally said. "For now, you'll stay." The boy's face lit up, a small, cautious hope flickering in his eyes. The baby babbled happily, tugging at the blanket, and for a moment, the mansion felt less like a cold palace and more like a home. That night, Ethan walked them to a guest room prepared for them. The room was lavish, filled with plush toys, soft blankets, and a bed big enough for the two of them to sleep safely. The boy climbed in with the baby, tucking her carefully under the blankets. Ethan watched, feeling a strange, unfamiliar warmth swell in his chest. "Sleep well," he said quietly, stepping to the door. Liam looked up at him. "Sir, will you stay?" Ethan shook his head, smiling faintly. "Not tonight, but I'll be nearby." He paused, glancing back at the two small figures curled together. "You're safe now. That's what matters." Once he closed the door, he leaned against the wall, exhaling slowly. He had always been a man of control, of power, of precision. But now, there was chaos, uncertainty, and responsibility in his home. And yet, for the first time in years, he felt alive. The next few days were a blur of discovery and adjustment. Ethan introduced him to the staff, who were initially hesitant, but quickly warmed to Liam's polite manners and Emma's infectious giggles. He bought clothes, shoes, and warm blankets for them, all of which the children marveled at. For Liam, the mansion was a wonderland. He explored every corner cautiously, holding Emma's hand tightly, ensuring she didn't get lost. He discovered a library filled with books, toys and rooms he had never imagined existed, and even a small indoor garden where flowers bloomed despite the winter outside. Ethan watched quietly from a distance. He had never imagined caring for children could be so complicated. Yet, every small smile, every laugh, every moment of trust they offered chipped away at the walls he had built around himself. One evening, as snow fell silently outside, Ethan found Liam sitting by the fireplace, Emma asleep in his lap. The boy looked up at him, eyes full of wonder and gratitude. "Sir, why are you helping us?" Liam asked, voice barely a whisper. Ethan hesitated. He wasn't used to questions like this, not from children. He had spent his life explaining things with logic, with contracts, with numbers. But here, words felt insufficient. I don't know," he admitted finally. "I just couldn't leave you out there." Liam nodded, as if that explanation was enough. Emma stirred in his lap, waking slightly, and Liam gently soothed her. Ethan watched, struck by the boy's natural instinct to protect. And he realized something profound. These children didn't just need shelter. They needed care, guidance, and love. And maybe he needed them just as much as they needed him. But even as warmth and laughter began to fill the mansion, a shadow lingered. Social workers might ask questions. Distant relatives might appear. The world outside might not understand why a billionaire had taken two children under his wing. Ethan knew that sooner or later he would have to face that reality. For now, though, he focused on the moment. Liam and Emma, safe, happy, and slowly learned to trust him. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. The mansion no longer felt empty. It had laughter, warmth, and the stirrings of family forming in its cold, echoing halls. That night, as he sat alone in his study, Ethan allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. The world was complicated, messy, and often cruel. But inside his home, he had found something simple, pure, and unbreakable. He had found hope, and for the first time in a long time, he looked forward to tomorrow. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the mansion, dusting the marble floors with golden light. For most people, it was just another winter day. But for Liam and Emma, it was the first morning that felt like home. The fire from the night before still smoldered softly in the hearth, filling the air with warmth and the faint smell of burning wood. Liam stirred from his sleep, careful not to wake Emma, who lay curled up under a thick blanket. The boy's small fingers brushed her hair away from her face, a gesture both tender and protective. He glanced at the window, watching snow fall in lazy flakes across the gardens below, and a rare smile crept across his lips. This mansion was no longer a cold, intimidating place. It was full of possibilities, laughter, and perhaps, just perhaps, a future that didn't involve fear, hunger, or loneliness. Liam could feel it in the air, in the soft rustle of curtains, in the smell of breakfast drifting from the kitchen. And then he heard the unmistakable click of footsteps on the marble hallway. Ethan appeared, carrying a tray with steaming hot chocolate and freshly baked pastries. His expression was softer than Liam had ever seen. The man who had seemed so untouchable, so distant, now smiled down at them with a warmth that made the boy's heart swell. "Good morning," Ethan said, setting the tray down carefully on the low table. "Sleep well." Liam nodded, handing the baby a small sip of chocolate. Emma gurgled happily, the first fully relaxed sound she had made since the cold night on the streets. "You made this for us?" Liam asked, his voice full of awe. Ethan chuckled softly. "I didn't make it, but I can order the best anyone's ever had. Eat before it gets cold." For a moment, Liam felt like this was a dream, a fantasy that might vanish if he blinked. But the warmth of the food, the crackle of the fire, and Ethan's presence grounded him in reality. He watched as Emma clumsily held her cup, giggling when a drop fell onto her blanket. Ethan's lips curved in a smile, the first real smile Liam had seen on him. A smile that didn't feel forced, but genuine. After breakfast, Ethan suggested a tour of the mansion. Liam hesitated, gripping Emma's hand. He was curious, of course, but unfamiliar places often felt intimidating, and he worried about losing her. Ethan noticed, but didn't comment. Instead, he guided them slowly room by room, pointing out toys, books, and cozy nooks. "This is all for us?" Liam asked, eyes wide. Ethan paused at the doorway of a room filled with stuffed animals, miniature furniture, and books stacked neatly on low shelves. "It can be," he said softly. "If you like it, it's yours." Emma toddled forward, clutching a plush rabbit, her laughter ringing through the room like tiny bells. Liam couldn't help but smile. Here, in a mansion that had once seemed cold and unwelcoming, he felt a flicker of safety, of happiness. But just as warmth began to settle in their hearts, the mansion doors opened with a harsh knock. Ethan's expression stiffened. A woman in a suit, clipboard in hand, stepped inside. "Mr. Blackwood?" she asked, her tone polite but firm. "I'm from Child Protective Services. We received a report about these children. We need to ask a few questions." Liam's grip on Emma tightened, and the baby whimpered softly, sensing the sudden tension in the room. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Of course," he said, masking his rising irritation. "But I'll warn you, I don't appreciate unnecessary delays." The social worker glanced at Liam and Emma. Her eyes softened slightly at the sight of the children, but professionalism won over sentiment. "I understand you're trying to help, but I need to ensure their safety. Where are their parents? Why are they here?" Liam swallowed hard. "Our mom, she's gone. Our dad, he's not coming. We were outside, and Mr. Blackwood, he trailed off, glancing up at Ethan for reassurance. Ethan stepped forward, putting a protective hand on Liam's shoulder. "They're safe now. I found them in the streets last night. I won't let anything happen to them." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Sir, this is a serious matter. You can't just take children off the streets. There are legal procedures." Ethan's tone was calm but unyielding. "I'm fully aware. But I also know what it's like to be alone. I won't abandon them now." They're under my care until we can make proper arrangements. And I assure you they're safe, fed, and warm. If that's not enough proof, you can inspect anything you like." The social worker hesitated, taken aback by his confidence. Liam looked up at Ethan, eyes wide and grateful. The boy felt a surge of trust. For the first time in his young life, someone fought for him and Emma with a strength he didn't fully understand. After a tense exchange, the woman finally nodded. "Very well, but I'll need your contact details and a plan for their long-term care." She handed Ethan a form, which he signed swiftly, his signature crisp and deliberate. "I'll ensure they're well taken care of," he said. Once she left, the mansion seemed to exhale. The children clung to Ethan, their trust in him growing stronger. He felt something shift inside him. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was responsibility, and it felt right. Over the next few days, a routine began to form. Liam and Emma explored the mansion with growing confidence. Liam discovered a small indoor garden where the flowers smelled like summer, even in winter. Emma adored the playroom, crawling and giggling among plush toys, blocks, and a small wooden train set. Ethan, for his part, learned quickly how to balance his business life with these new responsibilities. He found himself laughing at Liam's curiosity, marveling at Emma's innocence, and even cooking simple meals, something he hadn't done in years. One afternoon, while Ethan was in his study, Liam wandered in, Emma in tow. "Sir, can we help you with something?" Liam asked shyly, clutching a small toy train. Ethan looked up from a stack of papers, surprised by the offer. He smiled faintly. "You don't have to, but if you want to, you can help me organize these." Liam eagerly began sorting papers, placing them in neat piles under Ethan's guidance. Emma, fascinated by the noise of the typewriter, banged on it gently, giggling. For hours, the mansion buzzed not with business deals or appointments, but with play, laughter, and the rhythms of a new family forming. Evenings were spent by the fireplace. Liam read stories aloud to Emma, Ethan occasionally joining in with exaggerated voices or dramatic gestures. The mansion walls, once echoing with silence, now carried the sound of joy, chatter, and warmth. But amidst the laughter, Ethan felt an old, achy surface, a memory of loss, of family he had once held dear and lost too soon. He watched the children play, their trust in him absolute, and realized that this might be his second chance, not just to care for them, but to heal himself. One night, Liam approached Ethan while Emma slept. The boy's eyes were wide, a mixture of innocence and seriousness. "Sir, will you be our dad?" he asked softly. Ethan froze. He had expected many things, questions, fears, doubts, but not this. The words hung in the air, heavy with hope and trust. He knelt down to Liam's level, his heart pounding. I don't know," he admitted honestly. "I've never been a dad before, but I promise I will protect you and Emma. I'll make sure you're safe and happy. That I can promise." Liam's small hand reached out, clutching Ethan's fingers. "That's enough, sir. That's enough for now." The next morning, the mansion was filled with snow-covered light, golden and bright. Liam and Emma ran to the halls, playing tag, giggling and laughing freely. Ethan watched from the top of the stairs, smiling. For the first time, he didn't feel the weight of his loneliness. For the first time, he felt like a family could truly exist, even in the most unexpected circumstances. But as he watched, he knew challenges lay ahead. There were legal matters, social scrutiny, and the ever-present fear that the fragile trust between him and the children could be broken. Yet he was determined. Whatever it took, he would fight to keep them safe, to keep this family together. Because for the first time, Ethan Blackwood understood what truly mattered. Not deals, not money, not power, but love, protection, and the tiny hands that now trusted him with their lives. And as Liam and Emma ran across the snow-dusted garden outside, he allowed himself a rare, quiet smile. The mansion was no longer just a house. It was home. The mansion had transformed over the past weeks. What had once been a silent, cold palace now echoed with laughter, footsteps, and the small, chaotic sounds of children discovering a life they had never known. Liam had grown more confident, taking care of his little sister with a careful patience that made Ethan's chest swell with pride. Emma, now a little braver, laughed freely, exploring every corner of the mansion with wide-eyed curiosity. Ethan watched them from the staircase landing, his hands resting on the polished banister. He had spent countless hours thinking, calculating, and worrying about what the future might hold for them. Social workers had called daily, relatives had inquired, and the legal challenges were real, but none of that mattered now. What mattered was here, in the sound of Liam's laughter as he chased Emma across the living room, the way Emma's tiny hands clutched Ethan's coat when she ran to him for comfort. What mattered was a bond forming between them, stronger than fear, stronger than uncertainty. That morning, as sunlight poured through the tall windows, Ethan found Liam and Emma at the breakfast table, giggling over spilled syrup and scrambled eggs. The boy looked up at him, eyes shining. "Sir, can we go outside? The snow is perfect." Ethan smiled, the warmth in his chest almost painful in its intensity. "Of course," he said, finishing his coffee and standing. Bundled in thick coats, scarves, and mittens, the three of them stepped outside into the winter wonderland. The snow glistened like diamonds in the morning light, covering gardens, rooftops, and the distant city skyline in a pristine white blanket. Liam ran ahead, Emma toddling after him with unsteady steps, while Ethan followed, hands in pockets, watching them with a rare serenity. For a moment, it felt as though the world had stopped. There was no harshness, no judgment, no responsibilities, just snow, laughter, and the fragile, growing trust of a family forming before his eyes. Ethan crouched down to Emma's level, lifting her into his arms. "You're getting too fast for me," he teased, smiling softly. The baby gurgled, kicking her legs with delight, clutching his coat. Liam, spotting a perfect patch of untouched snow, grabbed a handful and tossed it playfully at Ethan. Ethan laughed, an unguarded, genuine laugh that hadn't graced these halls in years. Snow flew, powdering the children's hair, and for the first time, he felt completely alive in a way money or power had never given him. But even in this joy, Ethan knew the outside world could not be ignored forever. Legal papers, social workers, distant relatives. They were all part of the reality he could no longer postpone. He had thought about adoption quietly in his mind, weighing responsibilities against emotions. But today, he realized it was time to take a bold step. Later that afternoon, after warming up by the fireplace and sharing cocoa, Ethan brought Liam and Emma to the study. On the desk lay stacks of paperwork, adoption forms, legal agreements, and documents that could make them a permanent part of his life. The children looked at the papers with curiosity, unaware of their gravity. Liam tilted his head. "Sir, what's all this?" Ethan knelt beside him, keeping his tone calm but earnest. "These make it official. They can make you and Emma a part of my family forever. If you want." The boy's eyes widened. "Forever?" "Yes," Ethan said. "You'd be my children. I'd take care of you, love you, and protect you. Always." Emma, sensing the way of the moment, crawled into Ethan's lap, clutching his jacket. Liam reached for Ethan's hand, squeezing it tightly. The silence that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was a silence filled with hope and trust. After a moment, Liam whispered, We want to stay with you forever." Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. He had never imagined hearing these words from children he had just rescued from a harsh, uncaring world. He took both their small hands in his own, holding them firmly. "Then it's settled. You're mine officially. And I promise I'll never let anything hurt you." The three of them embraced, snow-dusted hair and mittens tangled together in a warmth far deeper than any fire could provide. It was a moment of pure connection, the start of a family that had been born from snow, desperation, and an act of kindness. Days turned into weeks, and life in the mansion settled into a rhythm. Ethan discovered that children could teach him patience, empathy, and joy in ways no business deal ever could. Liam and Emma grew more confident, their laughter echoing through halls that had once been silent. They discovered hidden rooms, secret gardens, and treasures tucked away in books and drawers, while Ethan silently watched, realizing that the mansion no longer belonged to him alone. It belonged to all three of them. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the snow-covered skyline, Ethan brought out a sled and took the children to the front garden. Liam squealed with excitement, Emma's tiny hands clinging to Ethan as they slid down a small slope. The air was filled with the sound of laughter, joy, and the invisible threads of love binding them together. Afterward, as they huddled under a warm blanket on the porch, Ethan felt a profound sense of peace. The world outside could be harsh, indifferent, and unkind, but inside these walls, they had created something resilient. They had created a family. That night, after tucking Liam and Emma into bed, Ethan lingered at the doorway. The baby's soft breathing and Liam's gentle sighs filled the room. He thought about his past, the wife he had lost, the loneliness that had consumed him for years, and the walls he had built around his heart. And he realized something extraordinary. Life had given him a second chance, a chance to love, to nurture, and to be loved in return. These children, fragile yet brave, had brought him back to himself in ways he could never have predicted. As he closed the door, he whispered to himself, "We're a family now, forever." The next morning, Ethan arranged for professional photographs, a keepsake to mark this new beginning. Liam and Emma, dressed in cozy winter outfits, laughed as a photographer clicked away, capturing snow-dusted curls, small hands clutching Ethan's coat, and smiles so genuine they could melt the coldest hearts. The photographs would later line the walls of the mansion, a testament to the bond they had forged. A billionaire who had once been alone, a boy who had never known safety, and a baby who had never felt warmth. Together, they were no longer fragments of broken lives. They were a family complete. Weeks later, the official adoption papers were finalized. Ethan signed with a steady hand, and Liam and Emma were declared legally his children. That afternoon, they celebrated with a small cake, candles flickering, giggles filling the room. Ethan let Liam blow out the candles, and Emma clapped, their faces glowing with joy. And as they hugged him tightly, Ethan realized that wealth had never meant as much as this. The privilege of being trusted, needed, and loved by two small, miraculous beings. The snow outside had stopped falling, leaving the world crisp, white, and bright. The mansion, once a cold fortress, now radiated warmth, life, and love. Ethan stood at the window, watching Liam and Emma play in the garden, hearts light with the kind of happiness money could never buy. He bent down, picking up Emma, her tiny hands clutching his coat. Liam ran over, holding his father's hand tightly. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. They were safe. They were happy. And they were a family. Ethan smiled, a rare, unguarded smile that reached his eyes. "We've come a long way," he said softly. Liam nodded, his small face beaming. "Yes," the boy whispered. "Forever." And for the first time in years, Ethan knew that this was exactly where he was meant to be. The mansion lights glowed warmly against the dusk, reflecting off the snow, creating a golden halo around the three of them. Inside, there was laughter, warmth, and love. Outside, the city continued its hurried pace, oblivious of the miracle that had just taken place. But that didn't matter, because inside the walls of the mansion, a family had been born from snow, hope, and a billionaire's heart willing to care. And nothing, neither time nor wealth nor the world outside, could ever change that. Ethan Blackwood had everything money could buy, but until he found Liam and Emma, he had nothing that truly mattered. From a snowy street to a mansion filled with warmth and laughter, a lonely billionaire discovered the most precious treasure of all: family, love, and hope. These two small, brave hearts reminded him, and all of us, that sometimes it's the smallest hands that can change the biggest hearts. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe in kindness, love, and second chances, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs a smile, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories like this one. Remember, a simple act of compassion can change a life forever. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep your hearts open, because love always finds a way. Fade out with soft music and cinematic shots of the mansion, snow, and the smiling family together.